Sup, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today I figured I'd talk to you guys a little bit about the advantages and the disadvantages of adding these automated queuing mechanisms into the game that facilitate and streamline social interaction. So we're talking LFR, LFD, all that stuff. I'm not going to be talking about like one in specific, but just anything that you click a queue button, you're in the queue, you're in the dungeon, you're at the dungeon, no big deal. You didn't talk to a single person, you didn't have to make friends, you didn't have to even say a fucking word, and you've already done group content. Has that been good for the game? And honestly, I want to say, like, I kind of said that like kind of I don't know, like accusingly. I'm going to try and be as objective as possible in this video, and I'm going to really try and discuss the trade-off. What have we gained? What have we lost? There have been a lot of things that we have gained, a lot of things that we have lost, and I want to have a discussion and a real objective discussion with you guys about this, and in doing that, I want to kind of say my biases and the way that I feel about this whole thing before I really get into talking about the advantages and the disadvantages, so you guys can say, understand. I think that if I'm going to be doing a, something that I'm trying to be objective about, I have to at least say kind of the way that I feel about it, so you guys can understand, like why I might say things in certain ways that I do. Now, the way that I feel about it is, I think that the LFD is much less of a sinister thing than LFR is. Really, I think that, whenever you're leveling up through the game, the LFD tool is very, very useful. In terms of like max level content, I really wish that they would make more things that you can't really queue for, that you have to interact with other players with. But in doing that, I think that there are a lot of problems that are intertwined with that. We're going to talk about those a lot, like server sizes, dead servers, all that kind of stuff, and solo players, all that. And so all of these things really kind of do come together to make a very, very convoluted puzzle of really what would really be the best thing to do. And so that's really what I think. I would like to see all of the max level content not really be queue-forable, except for maybe like normal mode or very easy heroic mode dungeons. And it seems like they're making that transition now with mythic dungeons not being able to be queued for. And it's the same with like normal mode is very easy, in Hellfire Citadel. And so they're kind of pushing people out of the queue and into the world. And I think that that's very good. And so I also want to say, but that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so just to make sure that you guys know where I am, and so if that affects the way that I present things, you can at least see why, and it's out in the open. And so anyway, one of the reasons that I really, I was going to make this video a couple of days ago, and one of the reasons that I decided to make it today was because, for one, I haven't made a video in 2 days, and so I figured I probably should fucking do that, right? But besides that, I saw a tweet by Greg Street. If you guys don't know who Greg Street is, he was one of the lead developers in World of Warcraft up until I think about 2000. I don't really know exactly when, but he was one of the very lead developers in Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, and I think Intimus of Pandaria, and his name's Ghostcrawler, and one thing that he said is that probably, he kind of basically said the same thing that I did. I don't think that I really have the tweet here right in front of me. That's poor, never mind. Yeah, I can't really find it right now, but anyway, pretty much what he said is that the LFD and LFR, LFD would be better if it was like for more harder dungeons. And a big thing with Ghostcrawler, by the way, and we will talk about this as well, is that at the beginning of Cataclysm, the 5-man dungeons were extremely difficult compared to the Wrath of the Lich King dungeons beforehand. And the reason I say it like that is because the Burning Crusade heroics were way fucking harder than the Cataclysm heroics. Like, we did Cataclysm heroics on like the 3rd or 4th day, and it was a fucking joke, right? But for an unorganized group that doesn't have to communicate, that's not used to communicating, like with Wrath of the Lich King heroics, it's over gears it, and it doesn't really matter, because Wrath of the Lich King was when the group finder was added, and so people are already accustomed to not communicating, not talking, just going directly into the dungeon, go 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 mentality. And Cataclysm heroics pretty much put a direct stop on that, upset a lot of people. And so Ghostcrawler made this post saying that dungeons should be hard, and that upset a lot of people. And honestly, like a lot of, here it is right here, I'm trying to find it, the post that was made. Yeah, okay, so the question was LFD and LFR. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all is said and done, bad for the game. He responds and he says, I don't know. If you put a gun to my head, I'd say LFG with harder dungeons and no LFR, but it's a crapshoot. And pretty much like, that's probably the most thing, the most important thing that I think that really comes out of this is that, I think that whenever he made that post, that dungeons should be hard, and that got a lot of people. That was a very controversial post whenever he did this, and this was like in 2010, 2011, very, very long time ago. Not a lot of people remember this, but whenever it happened, it was very controversial because people were used to steamrolling through dungeons in Wrath of the Lich King, and now that is completely stopped, and it made things more difficult. And also with an automatic queuing mechanism, a lot of these things, you run into problems that you wouldn't really necessarily have if you didn't have that automatic queuing mechanism. Now, before we really get into the negatives and the disadvantages, I do want to talk about some very, very crucial positive advantages that this group finder system has added into the game. Now, the group finder system has added, I think probably the most important thing, honestly, is fast queues, right? And so if you queue up for something, where it used to take you like 30 minutes to find a group to do Gundrak or Shattered Halls or something like that, in Wrath of the Lich King or Burning Crusade, now it just takes maybe like half, not even, because that took probably a half hour. It took like 5 minutes, and if you're a tanker or healer, it's almost instant. And so it's kind of like on-demand gameplay, and it makes it a lot easier for people who don't really have a lot of time. And so all of these things really should be taken into account. And so for people who don't have a lot of time, and they don't really have, like a lot of time to sit in queue and find people, and they don't really want to have to deal with that, and that's something else that I want to talk about as well. But for people who don't really want to have to deal with that stuff, don't really have the time for it, the introduction of LFD and then LFR made things a lot easier for them to get into that group content. Now, there is a lot of argument whether is this really group content when you don't really have to interact with other players, and we'll talk about that as well, but I think that it's a give and take. Sometimes you can get into a group and you can meet a couple of cool people. I've met a number of pretty cool people in through like LFR and LFD. Obviously, it's been like probably like less than half a dozen in like the last 3 or 4 years, and so it's very, very uncommon, and I think that that's probably the experience that a lot of other people have had, but saying that never happens is not true. And so there are those advantages, and that's a big one, is probably the fast queues. Now, besides that, and I think this is a very, very big problem, and probably, in my opinion, the biggest evidence and argument for having these LFD and LFR things in the game is the problem that we have with dead servers. Now, whenever you're not on a dead server, you don't even understand that these things happen. But whenever you are, it's impossible really to get anything done. Before they had the auction houses merged, and so like usually sometimes there's like on Kel'Thuzad, it's like 99% alliance. And so if you're Horde and the auction house wasn't merged with alliance, there'd be like no way for you to be able to find anything you needed on the auction house. So it's just like it's a very, very unfun game, and that responsibility, that is a huge problem, and that problem is 100% Blizzard's fault, and that's probably like honestly one of the biggest problems with the game right now, is that players are put on servers that are dead, or servers do die, and Blizzard doesn't do enough to consolidate those servers and still keep that MMO experience alive. And then you have all these external problems with dead servers, like not being able to find a guild, not being able to do all kinds of things. And the difference between like me playing on because I used to play on Thrall Alliance, and so like occasionally I'll like get on another character on there to do I remember I did like Herald of the Titans on that character, and I tried to join a guild just so I could literally get over to Old War faster because of the mounted perk, and I couldn't even find a guild. If I said I'm looking for a guild on Kel'Thuzad, I'd have like 8 different guild requests. And so there are all these very small things that players on large servers don't really understand. And so one of the big things is being on a small server is it's very hard to find groups, and especially the smaller the server is, the harder it is to find groups. And so LFR and LFT allow these players who are on these small servers, and it's like, is it really fair that Blizzard puts like these servers in the game and has a situation where you have to actually pay extra money on top of the money that you've already paid to play the game in the fashion and in the facility that it's, that it's supposed to be played in an MMO, a multiplayer environment? A lot of these servers, like you can go through the main city and maybe see 2 or 3 people. It's very, very, it's really kind of, it's depressing, right? And so, this is a big issue. And I think that, honestly, as I said before, it's the biggest driving factor for me to say that, LFD at least is warranted, and it should probably maybe be in the game, as that, you have players on these dead servers, and even if they do want to socialize, even if they do want to interact, they don't even have that option to, unless they pay more money on top of the money that they've already paid to buy the game, to buy the expansions for the subscription fee, and then you have to pay again to even enjoy the game in the facility that it was, supposed to be in. that really kind of seems unfair, and that, as I said, the fault of that lies on Blizzard alone, and the faster they can merge servers, the better. And so that is probably, again, the biggest reason for me to say that, wait a second, LFD and LFR really help these people out who really don't have another alternative, especially, if somebody's tight on money, something like that. I mean, you could be saying, if you're tight on money, maybe you should get a fucking job and not play WoW, but hey, look at me. So anyway, it's a give and take, and that's probably like one of, as I said, my strongest argument for it. Another thing is that a lot of players, like this is like my mom, and I'll also say something else with my mom, because I use her, the reason I use her, I've said this before, is the reason I use her as an example is that she is like a polar opposite of myself in terms of how she plays. She only plays by herself. She never raids. She does not care about achievement points. She doesn't even care about item level. She doesn't even like, she didn't even farm Invincible every week. I don't know what the fuck she's doing. She's just fishing. And she's not even farming mounts. Like, I have no idea. And so anyway, she's just super casual. Like, you think you're casual, you're not even half as casual as she is. And she plays all the time. And so, it's really, is that really casual, or it's just a different type of playing? And so there are a lot of people who they're not really very socially inclined, and having the group finder allows them to maybe interact with some players every once in a while, and it's very kind of very stress-free. They don't really have to deal with, dealing with other people. And some people, they do play the game to get away, and they don't want to really interact with other players. And the way that I really look at that is that it's not like you're going to play Call of Duty and expect not to shoot people. It's not like you're going to play Age of Empires and expect not to have to, mine different resources, right? And so there are a lot of things that are very core to the elements of an MMO, or like if you're playing a MOBA, you expect not to have lanes or something like that. There are all these things, and I think actually one of them does have that, but, other core MOBA aspects, FPS, RTS, MOBA, MMO, I think they're very core elements of a game, for each genre. And if you want to get rid of those elements of that game, you kind of get into this weird gray area where really you're trying to make everybody happy, but ends up nobody really is happy. And so I would really kind of argue against that, saying that you basically should probably, if you're playing an MMO, you should probably expect to at least interact with people in some facility if you want to enjoy the benefits of group content. But another problem with that, and I want to say this right now, and I honestly didn't even think of this, is that, well, I talked about it before, but not really in this context, is that raiding right now is such a huge part of the game, and it's so bad. I really hate it, and I think that a lot of other people do. Right now, whenever you hit level 100, you can farm rares in 10 and jungle, and you can do like a couple of crafting things, but basically all roads lead to Hellfire Citadel. No matter what you're doing, you go into the same raid in one difficulty or another, and you're doing the same thing. Mists of Pandaria was less like this, and Warlords of Draenor is even more like this. It's very raid-centric. Everything that you do has to get, comes from raids, takes you to raids. Everything is very much about raids. And there are a lot of players who don't really want to raid, period. My mom is another example. Adding LFR, adding these other things have not really made her want to raid or anything like that. But whenever you have all of the content really built in the end game around these group experiences, and there isn't really that same solo experience that a player could have in Vanilla or Burning Crusade, and in a lesser way, Wrath of the Lich King. In Burning Crusade, there were lots of things that a solo player could really engage in and progress their character in a meaningful way, and it was even more so in Vanilla. And now in Warlords of Draenor and Mists of Pandaria, really to even really break the surface of getting good gear and being able to progress your character, you have to get into a raid. Okay, it's really what it comes down to, or a mythic dungeon or something like that. And there isn't really that same solo experience. And so whenever a player hits level 100 and they say, well, listen, like, I don't really have a lot of time to play this game, and then all the time that's really spent development, all of the development time is spent around these raids and around these dungeons. Like, the raid quality is amazing. The dungeon quality, there's not that many of them, but Iron Docks is incredible. Like, Grimhill Depot is incredible. Like, these are really great dungeons, and they put a lot of work into them. And so, of course, they want to make sure that everybody sees this stuff. And what I would really like to see more than anything else is really kind of a expansion, really. It's kind of like double meaning there, but an expansion really of things that that don't have to do with raiding, things that you can advance your character in other meaningful, important ways, like farming for professions. I think professions serve as the biggest and the strongest solo form of progression in the game before LFR and LFD. And so you have all of these, all of this time, all of this development going into these raids, into everything. And so if you really want people to enjoy your game at all, you have to make sure that they enjoy and are able to get into these raids. And if you can't, they basically can't explore and can't enjoy a huge element of the end game that really wasn't the same. It wasn't really that in that same way in vanilla, in Burning Crusade, and even really in Wrath of the Lich King. And more as like the I guess like everybody is kind of like is expected to go into these raids and do these dungeons and everything. The more and more time and effort has been put into them. And the players who aren't really into that kind of stuff have really just been left by the wayside. And that is honestly another really big reason that they have LFR and LFD, is because so much of the resources are put into LFR and LFD, which is in itself, I think, a huge problem. And so, until they want to make that change, it would be very difficult for me to say that these things should be taken out of the game until they really do make a paradigm shift of what really the in-game leveling experience should be, if that really makes sense. But on that same note, I want to say something else, is that participation is not success, okay? Everybody does the fucking shipyard. How many people like it? Probably, I don't know, less than 10% of people enjoy it. I have been like the only person that I know out of like all my friends that make YouTube videos, or even people that I talk to, that doesn't just hate the shipyard, right? After I got my legendary quest done, I was just like, what the fuck? I sent one out. I got a ship. It's funny. I got a ship today. His name was Master Looter. It was meant for me, And all these things, I enjoy doing them, and everything like that. But I'm like one of the only people who actually enjoys the shipyard in any sort of fashion. It is okay. I don't mind it that much. Okay. And, everybody else really, really dislikes the shipyard, but everybody is doing it because they have to. And so whenever you make something forced and then you say, well, a lot of people are doing it, so that must mean it's successful, that's not really true. And I think that's been conflated very often recently in terms of what players do. And players are always really going to choose the path of least resistance. And, because of that, they're always going to be doing the easiest thing, even if it's boring, even if it's really unfun in a way, like the shipyard could be for a lot, obviously is for a lot of people, but they do it anyway because it's the best and most efficient way to level their character and advance their character. So I think that's another really big thing that is a misconception I think Blizzard has, and I see it. I see like kind of the logic behind it used a lot, that we have to make sure that everybody enjoys this and everybody's doing it, and so kind of like forcing participation usually doesn't also force excitement or enjoyment of something. And so I think that those are really kind of the advantages and what we've really gained from having the group finder, LFR, automated queuing mechanisms such as LFR, LFG, all that stuff. That's really what we've gained, I think, is, giving these solo players who don't really have the option, to communicate and interact with each other, a way to do that without really maybe a whole lot of stress. Also, fast queues, that's a big deal. And more than anything, gives players, on shitty small servers that don't really have the way, that option to get into bigger raids or anything like that. It gives them that way to do it. And like now we have the cross realming for raids and everything, but you can't do it with Mythic. And so really, at the absolute end game, you don't really have that same option that you did if everybody was on your server. And so it gives players on a dead realm really a way to kind of interact with the players, that they don't really have that option to unless they want to pay $25 more. And of course, the fact that so much resources is spent on raiding and is spent on dungeons, it would kind of seem odd for them not to have a way for at least people to at least see that stuff whenever so much of their budget is spent on it, which is again, I think in itself a problem. Now, I do want to talk about the disadvantages, and I think I've probably already been going on for a while. And so anyway, I think that the disadvantages, and this was also highlighted by a Greg Street Ghost Crawler, and it's something that's been an issue, is that whenever LFD came out, you would kind of wait for your friends to maybe queue up with them, but like before that, you would always wait for your friends to make sure that you got your buddies and you're doing these dungeons and it's no problem, and it's like the gang's all here, and I think that was definitely like really, really much better than it is now in that way, and it the dungeons make it to where you don't really have to play with your friends, or also, even if you don't really have to, there's no really incentive to wait for your friends, because, hey, you can just get it right now. And people always, players as a general rule, are always going to err on the side of convenience. They're always going to want to have more convenience. They want things to be easier and everything. And so it's always a balancing act for developers to, make the game enjoyable for people, not make it too hard, but also not make it too easy. I think that at this point we've had so much convenience added into the game that some of the sense of reward is being removed because it's so easy to get. And I think that that's been a big problem as well, and that's probably one of the biggest disadvantages, is that you don't really have that same incentive to meet people, to interact with people. Like, I can still remember, like, the people that I did Dead Mines with, like, and this is, so, like, we're talking, like, level 18, right? Level 18, like, months later, even into Burning Crusade, I played with them, and I did Karazhan and AQ and Zul'Gurub at 60 with them, and it was the same people. And so I made those connections very early in the game, and I think there are a lot of people who have those same experiences, that they were able to, like, meet people, like, getting into the game and everything. And now we don't really have that as much. You're boosted all the way up to 90, and you don't really have those same experiences. And also the Dungeon Finder makes those experiences not really, I wouldn't say like worthwhile, but necessary. You don't really have to interact with other players to do stuff now, and because of that, people don't. It's always easier, as I said, people are always going to do the path of least resistance, what's easier and everything like that. It does really kind of remove the requirement of socializing out of the game. And in an MMO, this is a massively multiplayer online game, and whenever you kind of have everybody, it seems like to me, this is just like my own real personal opinion, I guess like all of it really kind of is, but this specifically is it seems like this is the way I feel whenever I'm raiding, is that in a lot of these dungeons, especially with personal loot, and this is kind of an unpopular opinion, I don't really like the whole idea of personal loot. Now, whether this is a necessary evil or not is another video, but I don't really like the idea of it in a way, because it seems like everybody is progressing on their own simultaneous track. Everybody is their own hero of Azeroth. Everybody is the hero. The one true hero, the one commander, everything like that. And so everybody is basically playing this RPG game simultaneously next to each other. And I want to compare that to how it was in Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, and Vanilla in the most way. Is that everybody, I think that you created your own identity in the game, and in creating your own identity, you were much more attached to it, and it made players much more involved and attached to the game. And also, you were really playing together. You had loot that dropped, and everybody had this loot that dropped, and then you decided who got it. And I think that now everybody is just kind of playing simultaneously rather than playing together, if that makes sense. So anyway, I think that's another really big issue with it. Another thing is, of course, what I was just saying with personal loot is item distribution in general. Now, whenever LFR Dragon Soul came out, that was the biggest clusterfuck. I remember people used to need roll on every single piece of gear, and then they'd trade the gear back and forth at the end of the run. Like, okay, I got the necklace, but you got the boots. I don't need the necklace, but if you don't give me the boots, I won't give you the necklace. And so they trade the items, and it created for some very bad situations for some people, some very good situations for others, and in the end, like, you can say that it's good, you can say that it's bad, but I don't really know. It's really kind of up for grabs. I think that there are a lot of problems with it, but then again, there's problems with everything, and so that is probably one really big thing that has to do with it, is that the item distribution, and now we do have personal loot, and and also another thing with that is that that kind of removes like the idea of you really being rewarded. There's like the difference between like being rewarded and awarded. You're just awarded, you're just given gear, right? It's given to you regardless of your performance, regardless of, like, it's not like the group gives you an item. You're just given this item by the game, the fickle finger of fate, and it happens, and so it kind of takes the control out of the player's hand. And so compare that with how it used to be, where and how it is still now with a lot of groups, where you win a roll on an item, and maybe you can get it from somebody else, like tries to get it from you, something like that. And it kind of creates like interaction, and some of that interaction can be bad. I think that Blizzard in a lot of ways throws the baby out with the bathwater in terms of social interaction. Anytime that a negative social interaction can occur, Blizzard basically removes the entire possibility of a social interaction, of that type of social interaction, positive or negative, from occurring at all within the game. And I think that that's been to players' detriment, especially in terms of keeping players engaged with the game and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's really one big thing about the LFR thing, is that it does create kind of a weird paradigm with loot, where if you give everybody kind of the ability to decide, you have problems that you have in LFR Dragon Soul, and if you don't give people the ability to decide like you have with personal loot, then you have this disconnect between what a player does and what a player should maybe like earn in the game. There's no real sense of earning it. You just are awarded it, and whenever you are awarded something, you don't really get that same sense of reward. And so hopefully that makes sense with you guys as well. It also creates problems with toxic players, and like toxic players, this is like more of like a League of Legends term, assholes. Okay, assholes. And so, you have somebody maybe like me, who's like life giving people off the edge in Throne of Thunder, or one of those other amazing things that I used to like to do. And you have problems like that, and like this person really has no accountability, and it's very difficult to get rid of this person because of the vote to kick protections. And so all of these things are really kind of kicked in, and they end up protecting and giving these people who are like rude or mean or something like that, an avenue to do that where there really isn't any sort of way that players can punish them collectively, just by the way the vote kick system is set up. And I think that the biggest problem, this is the last thing I'm probably going to talk about here, the last problem, disadvantages with having these automated queuing systems, is that everything within the automated PvE queuing system is a guaranteed success. LFR is a guaranteed success. Like, I've never been in an LFR since maybe 1 or 2 in Siege of Orgrimmar where we didn't kill Garrosh. But besides that, every single LFR is a success. Every single dungeon group, heroic group, is a success. And so it creates this situation where if you get queued up, this is what happens. Is let's say you get queued up with somebody who's a complete idiot, and you end up wasting 30 minutes in a queue, 30 minutes in a dungeon, and you still don't get anything done, because basically Blizzard's queuing system set you up with somebody who's going to set you up to fail. And so, you just have bad players, or players who are even more than being bad, are toxic. They want to ruin other people's experiences, and they want to do that. And so Blizzard has created an environment where all of these systems that are, think about it, anything that you can queue for in one of these automated queuing mechanisms is 100% chance of success. And I mean, of course, it's not 100, right? But it's 98. It's really, really very rare. I've never had one of my dungeon groups not happen in this expansion. I think I've done LFR maybe half a dozen times. But besides that, for all the dungeons, I did LFR a lot more in Mists of Pandaria, but now I don't really do as much since you don't need the gear for challenge modes. So anyway, what it comes down to really is that because this is always 100% chance of success, there's no real sense of reward that you get out of it. And so, whenever you're doing something but it's like playing a Mario. Just imagine playing a Mario level or a Sonic level where you just run, then you hit the finish line, and that's it. No Goombas, no coins, no bullet bills, no Bowser. Not even a Donkey Kong to throw barrels at you. There's nothing. All right, you just run right to the end. Winner, okay? And are you really gonna feel like you're a winner? Because of course not, because you didn't really earn it. There was no real challenge involved. And so whenever something has 100% chance of being successful, the reward that you can get from that is very greatly diminished. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest problems, is that whenever you queue up for one of those, it's basically a reward system rather than necessarily a challenge in a game. And so this is the way that I feel about it. As I said before, I try to be as objective as possible. There are a lot of really good reasons that we have the LFR and LFT systems, and this is in no way myself apologizing for anything I've ever said. Pretty much a lot of things I say, I stand by those. It's not like I'm saying, oh, LFR is a good thing now, or LFR is a bad thing now. It's just a very complicated and complex situation, and I wanted to do a video and sit down with you guys and really talk about the ins and outs about this. And hopefully this, illuminated this more, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. I think that I got something out of this just by talking through it with you guys, and so hopefully you liked it. And really, what is the answer for this? What, in a lot of ways, the cat's out of the hat with this, you know? I mean, we've already got LFR, we've already got LFD. If they take it away, you know, like you have, there will be tons of people who are complaining, but, you know, like sometimes, you know, taking things away is good for the game, sometimes it's not. And, you know, what really is a solution? How can Blizzard, you know, go forward with this now that we do have the cat, you know, the proverbial cat out of the hat? And so, I think that that's really something that should be talked about and discussed, about really kind of how they really plan on revitalizing and bringing that social aspect back into the game, because I think that regardless of really what side of this you stand on, you can probably agree that we've lost a lot of the social aspect of World of Warcraft, and in my opinion, I think that's probably the most important aspect. And so whatever they can really do to bring that back, I think is more important than any individual's, mine, anybody else's real perspective on what should or could happen. And so, you know, what really is a solution? I don't really know. I think that, you know, if they were to get rid of this stuff, they would need a massive paradigm shift. And honestly, I'm not really seeing that happening in Legion, but, you know, a lot is to be determined. And so we'll see what happens. Again, I've tried to be as objective and unbiased and direct as possible. I do apologize if I have not been, but you know, there are really good reasons for and really good reasons against. And so hopefully you guys understand that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hopefully I guess you got something out of this in the same way that I did. So thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.